Hello, and welcome to another MonMae tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll learn about layers and layer depth. We'll learn how to add tiles to a room to create a town. We'll also review how to add collision tiles and how to add instances into this town. So let's get to it. To begin, let's take a look at RM world maps so we can gain a little bit of an understanding on how layer depth works. So here we have RM world map. We're going to disable the grid here so we can see the entire map without squares. And if we look over here on the left, we have the layer properties window. And if we click on this little eye icon, we can make the layers visible and invisible. Like so. So let's go ahead and make them all invisible, one at a time. This is the last layer, which is the very bottom of them all. And now, as you can see, down here, in the actual properties of this layer, we see depth. As we go up on the list, you can see this depth decreases. And this depth is how we decide how we draw these tiles, because certain layers will be in front if they have a lower depth than layers that have a higher depth. With GameMaker's list, all you need to understand is that the higher it is on the list, the more in front it'll be of layers below it. Going back to the asset browser, if we now go into our rooms, and if we go into the folder that says Duplicate Me, you can see we have a default room that we can work with. This room has everything by default that we can use for, or to make a room, I should say. So if we want to make a new town or a new room, then all we have to do is duplicate this by right-clicking it, duplicate, and then giving it a new name. In this case, we'll name it Room Test. Then if you go into this new room, we now have a default template to work with. Now that we have this new room, let's go ahead and create it. So if we go to this bottom subfloor, let's go ahead and make some grass. If we select the grass tile, we can either draw it one by one like this, or we can increase the size up here on the right, let's say up to 10, and we can draw it 10 at a time, or 10 by 10. We'll go with this dark grass color, and we'll just draw the whole room like this. Let's say we want to make a rocky path somewhere in the middle of all this grass. Okay, so let's select the rock tile, and as long as it's on the subfloor, we can draw on top of these grass tiles, replacing them, of course. And we'll go ahead and set a path here, maybe one going to the right. For a little bit, let's say we were planning to set a house here. Why not? So let's fill in a little bit extra, and you'll see why in just a little bit. Now if we switch to the floor layer, let's go ahead and get some grass. Now we could draw grass one by one, or we could grab several grass tiles and draw it this way. It would still be manual though. But what if we wanted to draw it all together in a simple way? Alright, so here we have the libraries, and the libraries are a simple way to be able to draw auto tiles. And these auto tiles can be used like a brush. As you can see here, we just filled the whole screen up, and you can set any patterns. We're going to undo this though, because we don't want to fill the whole screen with it. So let's say we just want a little bit of grass in certain parts of this map. We'll set some here. Maybe some on this path to cover it up a little bit. And let's say some on the right. It may look awkward right now, but we'll make some edits to this. Sometimes the way you originally envisioned this town, it didn't look quite right when you actually drew it. So that's why you can hide the layers and fix the bottom ones so that the top ones can look fine. Now let's add some water tiles. So if we go over here on the right side to our tiles, making sure we're on the floor layer, we scroll down, we can select these water edges, and of course we can manually set these, and it'll be on the floor layer on top of this grass, so it'll adjust itself. Or we can go to the libraries and draw it as a brush. But of course you always have the option to draw it manually, so let's undo this and just draw it manually by selecting this edge and then selecting the water tile and just drawing it in. Now with most of the flooring done, let's make a house. If we select the above floor layer, we can now select all these tiles for a house, whichever one you want, and now we can set it down. Let's say we want a house right here. Right there. Okay, so now we set a house down, and things are looking pretty good. But let's say we want some decorations to liven this up. So if we stay on the above floor layer, we can select these grass decorations found in this tile set. And we can put them anywhere we want since it's above the floor. Let's say we want some flowers, or maybe some saplings. We can put those around. Maybe a tree. What if we want to set this tree somewhere on the map? Maybe we want 2 trees. I'm gonna go ahead and select a different tree and set it down here. And I'm going to explain in just a second what we're gonna do with this extra tree. I'm going to quickly adjust some of these layers because this path only has 1 tile in it. So let's go ahead and remove 1 tile of grass. And as you can see, we have some dark grass at the bottom, so let's go ahead and change that. We'll select the subfloor layer, select the rock tile, and now we can draw it on that, and it looks pretty good. Okay, so we've previously talked about tile collisions. Okay, so let's switch to the collision layer, and we can draw the collision tiles, let's say here on the house and the water, and maybe over here on the left as well. And then lastly, we'll put them here on this tree. We don't really want the player to collide with this tree because, as you can see here, if we grab the player, he is on top of the tree. And usually we don't really want the player on top of the tree if it's the trunk, but we do want him behind the tree, especially for this top part of the tree. So we can get rid of those tiles right here, and this is where the overplayer tile layer comes into play. We switch to that layer and we draw just those 2 tiles in the overplayer. So now the player will be behind the tree, as you can see here. And since the collisions are in the bottom ones, the player will never actually be able to touch that bottom of the tree, so the depth won't really matter there. Since we're already messing with the overplayer, let's go ahead and delete the top of this house as well. So we remove the collision tiles as well. Now that we're back on the overplayer, let's grab the roof of this house and place it here. Let's put back the collisions, only this time 1 line below it. Now if we grab the player, you see he's still on top on these parts of the house, but here he's behind it. Finally, the last thing to go over is adding a door. So if you go into your asset browser, go to Objects, World Building, and select an object door, you can recall that you can grab it as long as you're in your instances layer, grab the door, and drag and drop it. You can then double click it, click on its variables, and you can set the room, and you can also set your X and Y offset. For any further questions, please see the MonMae door tutorial. All in all, I think this came out pretty good. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again in more MonMae tutorials.